Good afternoon to one and all present here. Welcome to the final speaker session under Episteme 2021, co-sponsored by HDFC Credila, India's #1 education loan company. As most of you are aware, Episteme is the annual finance festival of the Shri College of Commerce, organized by the Finance and Investment Cell SRCC. This year, we are proud to announce that the first online edition of Episteme has witnessed a participation of over 10,000. Each of our 6 competitions have had over 1,500 registrations each, and for the first time, we have had insightful panel discussions and speaker sessions. We are also pleased to announce that among Episteme's partners this year are leading corporates Bajaj Capital, Ernst & Young, HDFC Mutual Fund, Business Standard, and Grant Thornton, among many others. We now have our final speaker session organized as part of Episteme 21. Joining us today is Dr. Kanwal Sibal, a decorated diplomat who served as the 24th Foreign Secretary of India. A recipient of the Padma Shri for his many contributions to the field of public affairs, Sir has also served as India's ambassador to Egypt, Turkey, France, and Russia. Sir is one of India's leading public intellectuals and has written over 500 opinion editorial pieces for leading newspapers. A graduate of Punjab University, Sir joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1966 and retired after 50 years of distinguished service in 2007. The Finance and Investment Cell SRCC is honored to host one of India's brightest experts on public affairs. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time to be with us here today. I now invite the Faculty Advisor of Finance and Investment Cell SRCC, Mrs. Saroj Joshi ma'am, to welcome sir.
Thank you, Mahika. A very good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to the final day of the annual festival Episteme organized by Finance and Investment Cell SRCC. It's a great honor and a privilege to have Shri Kanwal Sibal sir as our esteemed speaker for the final session. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time out of your busy schedule. We are really honored and we are very, indeed a matter of pride for us to have you with us. I welcome you, sir. May I now request you to kindly take over the session and enlighten us with your thoughts and words. Thank you, sir.
Well, tell me how long should I speak and when will this session end?
So about 30 to 40 minutes. And if you allow, we can have a short question answer session.
Okay. 1 hour and all, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for the introduction. And thank you for inviting me to your program. The topic you've chosen is very, very apposite in terms of developments in international relations these days. The emergence and role of Quad powers. This has become all the more topical because we had the virtual Quad summit just a few days ago. Now, as you know, the Quad, the concept of Quad and the Indo-Pacific was initially launched by former Prime Minister Abe of Japan. In fact, in August or September 2007, when he was on an official visit to India and spoke to the Indian Parliament, he talked about the confluence of 2 seas, which is the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, and the diamond of democracies, which is Australia, Japan, USA, and India, having a role to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific. He elaborated on this idea in 2012 when he spoke even more elaborately about the concept of a free and open Indo-Pacific. And he said that the Indo-Pacific concept was intended to preserve the common good. At that time, he's also expressed serious concern about China's policies in South China Sea, and in fact went to the extent of saying that China wanted to convert the South China Sea into Lake Beijing, and again emphasized the security diamond. So it's not only the diamond of democracy, but he had also launched the concept of this diamond of democracy having a security vocation. Now, it just so happens in 2007, these four countries, Japan, India, Australia, USA, got together in what we call HADR, because there was this massive tsunami, and the four countries put their capabilities together to provide relief. And also there was a joint exercise at that time between these four navies, as well as Singapore. But China, sensing that this Quad concept and this Indo-Pacific concept might turn into a serious challenge to China, began to pressure Australia to distance itself from the concept as it was evolving. So in 2008, in what I would say was very shabby Australian diplomacy, the Australian foreign minister standing alongside the Chinese foreign minister walked out of the Quad. So therefore, the Quad became dormant till it was revived in 2017. It first met at an official level, and a few meetings were held at the official level. And then it was upgraded to the foreign minister level, and eventually to the summit level. And the summit, as you know, was held virtually a few weeks ago. One of the reasons why after 2017 the progress in developing Quad was slow was because of cautiousness of all sides, but in particular India. Because India calculated that India had very special problems with China. And these went beyond the maritime domain. It was essentially on the land border that we had our problems with China. And that in the maritime space, the China threat was becoming real, but it was still potential. Now, if that required that we manage our relations with China in a way that whatever we did in maritime space with the other three countries, which are military allies, should not make the management of our border more difficult. Because China, as you know, has been pricking on the border for a long time. Which is why we kept the door a little bit open towards China and not going too far in consolidating the Quad from the security angle. Now we also had to reckon the fact that all the other three countries have very, very massive relations with China. The United States is biggest partner of China. Australia, its biggest trade partner is China. Japan's second biggest partner is China, and Japan is the second largest, probably the largest now, investor in China. Now, India therefore had to very carefully assess whether the strength of the ties that existed would not actually constrain the other three countries from allowing the Quad concept to actually take a serious anti-Chinese dimension. And therefore, if India became too proactive in this, we could land up in a situation where US and China could solve their differences, reach some kind of an agreement. And if that happened, Japan and Australia as allies would follow suit, and India would be left high and dry. So that was the reason why India was relatively careful. The other thing is that this business about diamond of democracies, it's all right in terms of rhetoric, but India has been a democracy since 1947. And in terms of foreign policy, we have not gained anything very much from this. On the contrary, our biggest strategic challenge has been from the United States of America, who subjected us to sanctions ever since 1974, denied us high technology, prevented our missile development, supported Pakistan. In fact, indirectly helped Pakistan to become a nuclear power. In fact, they retarded our technological rise because of all these sanctions. And in fact, all their friendships were far stronger with other regimes, non-democratic regimes. During this period, in fact, the United States developed a huge relationship with China and helped build China the muscle that it has acquired today. And China was never a democracy. In fact, it was an authoritarian state, even a dictatorial state, which actually violated all the values which the United States talks about. As also, we had doubts about Australia, because Australian public opinion is very divided. The business community does not favor a stronger security policy towards China, because it interferes with that. Whereas the security and the intelligence communities and sections of the political class have been very strongly in favor of a more robust policy towards China. Even today that division exists, but what really has happened is that China has slapped such heavy sanctions on Australia, and they've treated Australia at the diplomatic level so shabbily that the Australian opinion has hardened. Similarly with Japan, China started pushing them on the Senkaku Island issue in the East China Sea, and that has also developed a certain bitterness in Japan towards China's aggressive policies in the South China Sea, which has made them much more amenable to strengthening the Quad with the Chinese angle in view. The other thing that we had which explained our caution, was that Japan may have reasons to be upset with China, but Japan has a constitution which does not allow them to take on defense responsibilities. In fact, they don't even technically have an army. It's called the Self-Defense Forces. And it's very limited to Japan's defense, so which means that they cannot take on responsibilities collectively to counter threats which may not be directed at Japan, but which may be part of a larger threat that that confronts its partner countries. So the actual value of Japan in terms of its contribution to security in the Indian Ocean has been always a little doubtful. So these were some of the reasons why we had gone slow. But then we were willing to have a gradual strengthening of the Indo-Pacific and Quad as a concept. Now, we should also relate this to the Malabar exercises that we have with the United States. They began in the 1990s. Then after a nuclear test, they got interrupted. Then they resumed again in the year 2000 or whatever. And they have become more and more complex in terms of participation and kind of threats that they theoretically are supposed to counter. So a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, we accepted Japan as a regular participant in the Malabar bilateral exercise, so it became a trilateral exercise. And last year, for the first time, Australia was invited, so it's become a quadrilateral exercise. So in other words, the Quad has acquired now also a serious maritime dimension, with the Malabar exercise in some sense being the fulcrum of all this. And interestingly, only a few days ago, or maybe the exercise then hasn't ended, there is now a joint Quad exercise with France called the La Pérouse exercise. So in that sense, the Quad is becoming consolidated in the maritime space. The other thing to note is that when the meetings took place at the official level and at the foreign minister level, there was no joint statement issued, which also called into seriousness the Quad as such, because the critics would say that, look, they are meeting together, but they don't have common thinking on what the issues and challenges are, because if there was that common thinking, then they would be able to issue a joint statement. So each country was issuing a separate statement depending on what they wanted to emphasize. For the first time at the summit level, a joint statement has been issued, which is quite remarkable because if you were failing to issue joint statements at lower levels, to issue it at the summit level meant that there was very great preparation behind it and hard bargaining so that everyone was on the same page with regard to what the importance in their eyes was of Quad and the Indo-Pacific. One of the reasons, or the major reason why this has happened, is because of China's policies under Xi Jinping, which have become more and more aggressive. China has committed aggression against India in eastern Ladakh for reasons which we still are not able to comprehend. It's not very clear what they wanted to gain from this, because at best they could gain a few fingers here and there, a few yards here and there, but they could not have hoped to defeat the Indian army. And at the end of it, in fact, there has been a stalemate. And for the first time, China has been forced to go back or retreat from a territory which it claims is its sovereign territory. Earlier on in Doklam also they suffered a reverse, but this has been a more significant reverse for them. But it has taught us a lesson, which is that China has, by dishonoring all the previous agreements that were negotiated with them 1993, 1996, 2005, 2012, 2013, they have destroyed the basis of the agreement to maintain peace and tranquility on the border, which means that now there is no real agreement on which the two sides have to base their actions on the ground, and it could actually be some kind of a free-for-all on the LAC, which means that the China's threat has become durable and has to be contended with, which would explain why we have become much more amenable to strengthening our role in the Quad. Similarly, Japan is facing constant provocations from China on the Senkaku Islands. And the new Japanese Prime Minister has been very vocal indeed. In fact, he's broadened the base of his criticism of China by including the Uyghurs and Hong Kong and Taiwan. And in the case of Australia, as I mentioned, since they have been subject to a whole range of sanctions, the mood in Australia has suffered greatly. And that would explain why we had the summit, why we had the joint statement. Now, from our point of view, in the background of what I explained about what our threat from China is, it has now become very clear that we have to hedge against China more and more, not only on land, but in the maritime space, because China has this maritime Silk Route project. They've been looking for developing ports and establishing footholds. In Myanmar, they've done successfully. In Bangladesh, they've been trying not so successfully so far. Sri Lanka, they have succeeded very well. Maldives, they were about to succeed, but they received a setback. And of course, in Pakistan, we are deeply entrenched. The CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, is linked to Gwadar, which China is developing as a big complex. They have a military base in Djibouti. And our expectation is that they will develop a naval base in either Gwadar or in Jiwani, which is next door, and link Djibouti and Jiwani. And in that sense, for the first time, they will have a real naval base in Indian Ocean, close to the vital sea lanes of communication from the Persian Gulf. Add to this is the fact that China today has the largest navy in the world, not in terms of tonnage, but in terms of number of vessels. And the number of naval vessels they are producing every year is phenomenal. Now, why are they producing all that? They have blue water ambitions. They want to have a navy which can go, and they've said so officially, which can protect their interests overseas. This means that they'll be more and more present in the Indian Ocean, which means, therefore, that we have to step up cooperation within the Quad. Now, India, while yes, it wants the Quad to have this focus on China and have a security dimension, also doesn't want Quad to be simply based on hedging against China, because that's not a sufficient basis for a prolonged, durable, in-depth relationship between these four countries. Therefore, they should have a wider agenda. And India has been pushing for this wider agenda, which should include HADR, fishing, piracy, smuggling, terrorism, etc., etc., apart from security. And I must say that India's objectives have been met in the Quad summit, because the joint statement issued at the summit has a much broader agenda. In fact, China is not even mentioned, though everybody understands that China was very much in the minds of people. And Jake Sullivan, the US National Security Advisor, when he gave a briefing on the Quad summit, very clearly said that China was discussed and that each country expressed its thinking on China. And it was noted that China was becoming coercive towards Australia, aggressive towards Japan, and had committed border aggression against India. This he said quite openly to the public. If you look at the Prime Minister's own speech at the Quad summit, he called Quad as a force for global good. There's quite a change from our earlier cautious approach to Quad. And he said that the Quad advances shared values and promotes secure, stable, and prosperous Indo-Pacific. Now, the fact that he said secure, stable, and prosperous, the word secure is important, because earlier we were trying to downplay the security aspect of Quad, but now he himself talked about a secure Indo-Pacific. Why do you want a secure Indo-Pacific? Where is the threat from? Threat is not from US, Australia, or Japan. It is from China. The joint statement itself says that the region should be free, open, inclusive, and healthy, anchored in democratic values, unconstrained by coercion, rules-based, rooted in international law, and it should counter threats in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. The beyond is interesting. It has not been spelled out what this beyond means. Now, I must go back a little bit to Prime Minister Abe's statement in 2012, when he talked about the diamond of democracies. He mentioned actually UK and France as countries that could and should cooperate with Quad, with France being a Indo-Pacific power, and Britain having this five-power defense arrangement, including Malaysia, Singapore, Britain, Australia, and New Zealand. And therefore, he felt that there was a role to play. And as you know now, France is very much in the Indo-Pacific. We've got an excellent maritime relationship with France, apart from the overall political relationship. And we're actually cooperating very intensively with France in the Western Indian Ocean. And UK, in this new integrated strategy, has talked about a tilt to the Indo-Pacific, and they plan to station their new aircraft carrier somewhere in the Indo-Pacific area. So I think that perspective is also likely to materialize. It has been very important all along to make sure that the ASEAN countries remain on board, because ASEAN believes that Quad and the Indo-Pacific concept somehow dilutes the centrality of ASEAN in terms of developing a regional security architecture. And if ASEAN has reservations, then we have a problem in managing this space, because right in the middle of the Indo-Pacific is Southeast Asia. So Southeast Asia has to be kept on board. And China has played the game of dividing ASEAN quite successfully, especially through Laos and Cambodia. So in that perspective, this Quad summit also emphasized the centrality of ASEAN, so as to give them a sense of comfort. And also, the objective is to engage Indonesia much more deeply, because Indonesia is the largest country in the region. It has maritime disputes with China, and bringing them on board becomes very important, apart from Vietnam, which in any case would be easier to cultivate and Philippines too, because of the problems that they currently have with China. Now, coming back to the broadening the base of Quad, as you know, at the summit, 3 working groups were created, one on climate change, one on emerging technologies, and the third on the vaccines. Now, the second one is very important because China's threat is in the technological domain, in the 5G, quantum computing, other robotics, generally in the telecom, digital area, and they have this huge program of digitalization, which they have successfully implemented in China and want to make that now part of the Belt and Road Initiative as the Digital Belt and Road Initiative. And in some of these areas, they have advanced over the United States and the Western countries. So now the idea is to these 4 countries to come together and pool their resources, technological, financial, scientific resources, to actually develop alternative technologies with a focus on standards. It's very, very important that standard setting is done before China sets up its standards and the others have to conform to those. So these working groups will be working over the year, and towards the end of the year, the Quad Summit will take place again. And with regard to vaccines, it's a big boost to India because India will manufacture these vaccines, American vaccines. Finance will be provided by Japan, and the last mile delivery will be done by Australia. So this actually feeds extremely well into Prime Minister Modi's ambition of India becoming the pharmacy of the world. And over and beyond the pharmacy of the world objective, the fact that India is recognized to have the technological capabilities in a domain which has become so sensitive and so vital for international international security in terms of protection against viruses. This will have a very positive fallout in terms of what we are talking about, resilient supply chains, moving some critical supply chains away from China and building them in India, because India's democracy and openness gives an assurance that there will not be the kind of disruptions and use of these supply chains to actually coerce other countries politically and diplomatically. So this will help in that respect also, provided, of course, we make our own ecosystem congenial for moving some of these critical supply chains to India. And finally, with these working groups having been formed, some kind of a structure is now being given to Quad. It's not a secretariat, it's not a permanent staff or anything, but it's the beginning of some kind of a structure, which can later on be built upon. I'll end with 2 final things. One is that China naturally is very much opposed, and it has upped its criticism against Quad, warning that India should not hitch its wagon to the United States. They should continue to preserve its independence of its foreign policy, and that this selective multilateralism is not acceptable. This is all complete nonsense, because China has grown on the back of the United States of America and its allies. In fact, it is that has given them the muscle, the military muscle and the economic muscle to pursue the policies they are pursuing today. So why shouldn't India, although we are 20 years late, try to benefit in whatever way we can from the American connection? And with regard to selective multilateralism, actually, China, Russia, India, we've done this selective multilateralism together before. We have the Russia-India-China dialogue. We have BRICS. There's the SCO. And China has its own Quad, which is Russia, which is China, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and of all countries, Nepal. To rope in Nepal into their orbit more and more. What is a little worrisome is the Russian objection. Russia has been quite vocal. His foreign minister, even here, when he came a couple of days ago, prefers to use Asia Pacific as a vocabulary rather than the Indo-Pacific, and indirectly talked about an Asian NATO. This is a cover word for Quad, which some opponents of Quad are using. That this China is saying that this as the beginning of power politics, bloc politics once again, and Russia has expressed its reservations both with regard to the Indo-Pacific and the Quad. Partly this is because Russia and China have become strategically very close, and Russia also wants to give support to China in areas where China feels concerned and threatened, because Russia itself is so hard pressed geopolitically, economically by the West, both US and Europe, that it has had to rely more and more on China. So there has to be some give and take. And finally, they're also worried about India getting more and more into the Western orbit, and therefore Russia's long established ties with India are in the process of getting diluted, and therefore they have some concern with this regard. But we are talking to Russia, and hopefully we'll make them understand, as we are trying to do, that this is not against them at all, that when we say the Indo-Pacific is inclusive, they are willing to join the Indo-Pacific. We have separate military exercises with them. In the Indian Ocean, we've also now had a trilateral service exercise. We have demonstrated to them the independence of our foreign policy by rejecting the threat of American sanctions and continuing, and we will certainly procure the S-400 from Russia, and we will nurture that defense relationship. So all in all, this is what I wanted to say. And if you have any questions, I'll be quite happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. That was indeed a very insightful and interesting session, and I'm certain that everyone here has learned loads from it. So we have collected a few questions from the participants. May I proceed with asking you these questions?
Sure. Can you speak a little louder though?
Sure, sir. So you spoke at length about the vaccine initiatives of the Quad powers. Supply shortages are making themselves visible in Maharashtra now. Will this affect our relationship with the Quad powers?
Not really, because in the Quad, what we decided was that we will manufacture 1 billion doses for supply to the Indo-Pacific region. So it was intended to actually cater to the needs of the Indo-Pacific area so as to prevent them from falling more and more into the Chinese lab. And so this Johnson & Johnson's vaccine will be produced in India under license. And as I said, Japan will assist in the financial part of it, because setting up, they've already signed up with Biotech N, but Biotech N has to put in enormous resources to produce 1 billion doses. So the finance part will come from Japan, and then the delivery to various countries in the Indo-Pacific region will be done by Australia. So it is really a collective team effort by the 4 countries to provide vaccines to the Indo-Pacific area. These are not intended for domestic consumption in India. So far as domestic consumption is concerned, apart from AstraZeneca, we have Covaxin, and now there's talk about allowing Sputnik to be produced in India on an emergency basis. And eventually, if the need is, apart from 1 billion doses that would be supplied to Indo-Pacific, anything in excess of that can be used within India. So I don't, these issues are not related, but what the question relates to is a wider issue, whether if India has supplied AstraZeneca to 80 countries and to 5 or 6 countries free of cost, especially the neighboring countries, we've given Covaxin, that whether this should have been given or not. The point here is that there was a contractual obligation to provide AstraZeneca to a certain number of countries under the COVAX program. So COVAX was paying the Serum Institute, who were then supplying a certain amount for international use by the COVAX, which is a kind of a organization which is providing free medicines they pay India, but they'll provide free medicines to a lot of developing countries. Now at the moment, there is a little restriction put on export of more vaccines, even under COVAX, and that has created some generated some criticism abroad. But because of this surge in COVID cases, for the moment, India has halted exports.
Thank you, sir. So what do you see as the future of China-Pakistan relations, and do you think that China will work harder on foreign relations because of the Quad powers coming together?
Oh, China-Pakistan relationship is very, very strong and will remain strong. The only friend China, it's a different matter, China relations with a lot of countries, but the only friend they have is Pakistan. And the only ally they have is in Pakistan. And the China-Pakistan economic corridor is unlike the BRI and all the other parts of BRI, which are basically commercial oriented. This is strategic, this is geopolitical. And China is violating international law by creating this corridor through Indian territory. They know it is Indian territory. The 1963 agreement that they had with Pakistan, under which Shakscam Valley was ceded by Pakistan, which never belonged to Pakistan, to China. The 1963 agreement itself says that the sovereignty of this territory will be decided, and then China will deal with whoever ultimately acquires sovereignty over this area. And then of course they link to Gwadar, where they want eventually to create a naval base for themselves, apart from a huge kind of a Shenzhen kind of a thing. That's in their program, kind of a complex, which will be the base for their exports to the Middle East and elsewhere and through the Mediterranean onwards. So it's a very geopolitical project. And lastly, the point to remember in this is that China has created two corridors, one through Myanmar into the Bay of Bengal, the other from Xinjiang to the Arabian Sea. So what the British tried to prevent the Russians for a couple of centuries, not to give them access to the Indian Ocean. Pakistan, which is a rump part of India, has gone ahead and given China this huge geopolitical advantage of linking China directly to the Indian Ocean.
So how do you think the problem of the South China Sea being taken into account, UNCLOS, have been able to provide any of the answers?
No, because Philippines had gone to the arbitration tribunal, which ruled entirely in Philippines' favor. But China bought off the Philippines leader, who was very mercurial, and he didn't take any advantage of this, thinking that he will get a lot of economic bonanza from China. That hasn't happened. On the contrary, now currently you see that in the Whitsun Reef, China is trying to assert its fishing rights. The UNCLOS arbitration award declared that the 9-dash line had no legal validity, and that China's claim in the South China Sea had no legal validity. But China just rubbished the claim. In fact, they developed a new theory of international law. Their member of the Central Committee, Yang Jiechi, who was at Alaska to talk to the Americans, he propounded a new theory that China will never yield an inch of territory bequeathed to it by its ancestors. There's nothing in international law which says that this can be the basis of relations between countries. So you can always say that my ancestors had bequeathed Nalanda University to China, and therefore they can claim Bihar. It's complete nonsense, but then this is what they said. So they are totally repudiated it, and they got away with it because the smaller ASEAN countries have no capacity to resist, and United States didn't do anything.
So do you think that India should have been a part of the RCEP, and did the unsuitability of the...
No. Because quite apart from the argument that the FTAs haven't served our interest. See, look at the interesting thing. We have a surplus of trade surplus with the United States of America, the most advanced economy, the most technologically advanced economy, where unless we are very, very good at what we export, we can't do that. We have a small surplus with the European Union. We don't have an FTA with them. Where do our deficits lie? All our deficits are eastwards, with all ASEAN countries and with China. So, so if we went into another kind of an FTA, at the center of which was China, we would forget this Atmanirbhar and manufacturing in India and everything else. You know, over these years, we've been telling China that this deficit with you is unsustainable. Therefore, if certain areas, IT, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, we can actually have access to advanced economies, why can't we have access to China? But China has never addressed our issues seriously. And even during the RCEP, they were not willing to address them. If they had progressively addressed them and the deficit had got consistently reduced, maybe there would have been a case. Otherwise, we were opening ourselves to even higher deficits. On the one hand, directly between India and China, and secondly, between India and the Southeast Asian countries, where China is now the biggest economic partner, where they have set up units, and through them, they would then export to India. Now, for Australia and Japan, it doesn't pose a problem. They're the biggest partners of China. Therefore, they will be quite happy to be able to expand their trade ties with China. In India, it's not the case. In our case, it's not an expansion of trade ties. It's the expansion of deficit.
So, since the end of the Cold War, India-US relations have been on an upward trajectory. And do you think we will see any large-scale macroeconomic level changes post-Biden coming into power?
Large-scale what?
So, do you think we will see any large-scale macroeconomic level changes post-Biden coming into power?
No, say that again. I didn't get the large-scale what?
So, macroeconomic level changes.
Macroeconomic level changes. I don't know what that means. Look, first of all, although I don't know what macroeconomic changes is intended to communicate, firstly, there's no scope for an FTA with the United States. Because the United States, Biden himself said that he's not going to enter into any trade agreements with anybody until he has assessed the impact of existing agreements on the US workers. So it's going to be a very self-centered approach again, protectionist approach again in many ways. In some ways less so, in some ways it will be a continuation of the Trump thinking and approach. So there's we have some outstanding trade issues between India and the United States, which we couldn't actually resolve during the Trump presidency. I have been a little bit familiar with what has been happening. And it would seem that while India was quite ready to go ahead and have this mini kind of trade, not agreement, but resolution of trade issues, United States was not very keen. They kept enlarging the number of issues on the table. They were not quite clear whether they wanted a small agreement or a larger agreement. And then they felt that they might actually win the election, and then they will talk about a much larger agreement. I think we'll take up that agenda again, whether it'll be the same or somewhat different. Our Commerce Minister has said that he's in touch with the new USTR, and they will go back to the drawing board and see if they can resolve some of the outstanding issues. But going beyond that is not going to happen, because even the RCEP was not acceptable to us. But the Americans have in mind very ambitious, high quality trade arrangements, which are not acceptable to us, because there's so many outstanding issues that we have, not only with the United States, but internationally, especially with regard to digitalization and data privacy, data management, digital tax, and all these issues, which will have to be which will have to be included in any trade, serious, broad-based trade talks with the United States. It will be very difficult to reach an understanding on that. Insofar as macro changes you're talking about, if the intention here is that some lifting of restrictions, caps on investments in this country, yes, already on the insurance side, we have agreed to 74% can be owned by foreign capital, which is a big departure. So if we can move a little bit more on land acquisition and labor reforms, yes, that can create a more congenial environment. And if we want to capitalize on supply chain moving out of China and coming to India, then some of these things we'll have to do.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very fascinating, and I believe I speak for everyone in the audience when I say that we have all learned so much from you. Thank you so much for being with us today, sir. I now invite Devashish Miglani, the President of the Finance and Investment Cell of Shri College of Commerce, to extend the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I, Devashish Miglani, on behalf of Finance and Investment Cell, Shri College of Commerce, extend my heartiest gratitude towards you, sir, for taking out time from your busy schedule and talking about such an interesting topic. It has been our highest honor to host you today. I also thank you for sharing for interacting with us and taking up all the questions that the audience members had. I also take this opportunity to thank our respected principal ma'am, Professor Simrit Kaur, without whose support this event would not have been possible, and our teacher in charge, Ms. Saroj Joshi, who has always been available and has motivated us to take this event forward. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye.